because I'll give you information
Good
on it.
evening, everyone. We are in the Public Arts Select Committee of Wednesday, January 10th. Health and Squallow, Increased Electment plus Squamish, Awayamail. Welcome to the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation. The committee has an agenda in front of them, and I'm looking for a motion to adopt the agenda. Moved by Maciek, seconded by Catherine. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. There are minutes from our last meeting. Any errors or omissions or corrections to the minutes? Don't see any. I'll have a motion to receive or approve the minutes. Moved by Meg, seconded by Adrian. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Is there any business arising from the minutes? If you think of something later, we can do it at roundtable at the end. So. And now we're on to business. First up, major projects discussion. I think most of us, yeah.
If I forgot to put on show and tell.
Oh, yeah, do show and tell.
Sorry.
Show and tell.
And I brought, on behalf of Matt Simmons from our capital project, I brought in this fabricated piece of metal that just also happens to be the same size as the, like on bike racks, the formation piece. So that's something that is being considered for down the road for new bike racks and things like that. But this was, I'm using the word fabricated. I don't actually know that that's the correct term.
Yeah, I think it.
We'll go with it. So this is fabricated in Squamish by a guy in Pemberton, on Pemberton Ave. So I thought I'd pass that around.
Squamish by a guy in Pemberton.
Yeah, exactly, on Pemberton Ave. So I thought I'd pass that along and just keep that in the back of your head in terms of interesting things and ways of adding
Yeah, that's great.
the mark.
Our brand.
Yes.
It's very, no one can break it.
No one can break it.
Well, it's part of the.
Let's never put temptation out there.
Yeah.
Don't even mention it.
Yeah.
That's neat.
Do we have a cost for
It's lovely.
those? If we wanted to put some on, like at the library kind of
It's all going to depend on
Yeah.
volume?
yeah, and what the project is and size, things like that. But we wanted to make you guys aware of it, that it is a possibility.
That's cool. I love it.
Can things be replicated?
Who is the person who made it?
I don't have his name. I can get it.
Okay. No rush, okay. Give credit where credit is due.
So it was laser cut.
Yeah.
Doesn't look like it. As you can see the blade.
Yeah.
I've probably just done one of those. What are those machines called? The IC.
CNC machine?
CNC.
But no, you can tell that's hand because
welded
yeah, you can see the
or cut.
the
Plasma
die
cut.
holes or whatever.
Plasma
Yeah.
cut stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, very cool.
Very neat.
Awesome.
Getting it CNC'd wouldn't be involved.
Is that the show and tell, or is there more?
No, that was it.
That was it.
Perfect.
That's good.
It's quick.
Oh, if I could just, because I don't have anything to show or tell, and maybe I should leave this to it later, but I found there are some great, on Instagram, some great just sort of street art. Just go street art. There are lots of people that just put up street art from all over the world, if you're Instagramming.
Is there any chance that you could look out a few of your favorite and maybe next month bring it so that we can see?
Oh, we all could.
Well, I think I've been promising for 3
Yeah.
years now to do that.
Yeah, I think you've been on the books for
tasked
I show and tell for a long time.
Sure, I can do that. I love doing that.
Cool.
I just don't.
It doesn't have to be a lot, just
No.
a few.
Yeah, once I get started.
It's difficult to know when to stop.
Why
Oh,
not?
yeah.
Exactly.
A few doesn't necessarily work.
Exactly.
On that note, I was in Boise, Idaho in November, and they had this wall called, they call it Freak Alley, and it's just this graffiti back alley. But if you have Instagram, it's on a video on the Squamish Arts Council's Instagram account to see it. It's really cool, like really, really cool.
Maybe we should create a freak alley. Like some of those ones behind Cleveland, between Cleveland and Second, between Winnipeg and Victoria.
Yeah.
There could be a really cool freak alley there. Like Kensington Market, Toronto, freak
Yes,
alleys all
yes.
over the place. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's awesome.
Adrian's thinking there, yeah.
He's thinking.
It's not behind his restaurant.
It's across from. Yeah.
Just one other comment. As I was walking back from Totem Hall, we go over the railway tracks, and I noticed the concrete blocks, they're starting to be all graffitied and that kind of stuff. Which is interesting, except that the railway goes right through there, and it's kind of, okay, so it's out of sight, out of mind, but it's not a very safe place to have that kind of stuff.
No, it's not, and unfortunately, I don't think you're ever going to discourage that.
And maybe not. There's some good stuff there.
Yeah.
actually. It's fun to look at it from the overpass.
So let's talk about major projects. We had a really interesting meeting with the elders of the Squamish Nation at Totem Hall this morning, lunchtime, I guess. I think almost everyone was at it, except Adrian. It was a really good turnout by the committee, by the way. Well, that was great to have a good turnout there. And Suecia was fantastic to initiate the meeting and the discussion. And I want to get committee's thoughts and impressions and where we take the next step with this. So just maybe for Adrian's benefit,
Sorry, guys.
no, that's okay. It was very much we sort of said this is we have collected some money over the last couple of years. We want to do something significant that honors, respects, connects truth and reconciliation with the community, with the nation. And we want to make sure we're doing this respectfully and in concert with the vision of the elders and with the wisdom of the elders behind it. So it was mostly them just talking about everything about from their experiences at residential school a little bit to where the nation would like to go with things to in terms of promoting their young people and their art and making their art more visible and showcasing their young people and making their young artists, making things easier for their young artists to be successful and to do art. And it was really not just about art, it was about their tradition, because art is so fundamental to their culture that it's not even, they kind of even said it's not even quantified art, it's just part of who we are.
Yeah.
They talked about trust, they talked about the fact that they were really honored and pleased that we had come and from a protocol point of view, and we're just talking about this morning.
Oh, right on.
Your
timing
we
is
just
good.
started, so you must have. Yeah, maybe I will stop there, and I will actually, maybe I'll pass it over to Alice and Suecia and let you get settled. And so it literally was just outlining for Adrian, who I think was the only one not there, what, a bit of the discussion that happened. And maybe I'll just pass it over to you to talk about how you think it went and talk
Yeah, I
maybe
think
about
it went
program.
well. The elders were happy that we made an attempt to be there and to share what we are and who we are and what we're doing and involve them from step one. And we got some ideas, but a lot of them were just like they were sharing from their heart, and they're excited that the process is started off in their elders' room, which is good.
Yeah.
Then we can always go back, like the brainstorming or whatever, but we'll go on that after.
Yeah. Some of the things that I thought were really fantastic were when Shirley was talking about in the way they do art, they do food, they do the nation. It starts from the moment you look at the tree that you find the tree that you're gonna use to build a canoe, and that's when the ceremonial and symbolic and spiritual process, artistic process begins, and you have to honor it right from that moment. I thought that was really helpful in terms of as we go down and we sort of start to define what this might be, that become a bit of a foundational piece to how we expect these projects to be evaluated and understood, and the criteria by which they might meet. And it doesn't have to be necessarily so literal, but it has to honor that. And this is just my impression, I'm looking for everybody else's too. It has to honor that intention that this is not just this is a spiritual journey, not just a creative journey. This is honoring that tradition.
Yeah, because even like another example of when the hunters go out, they would fast for 4 days because they are honoring the animal they're going to kill. So when they kill that deer, because that deer is going to provide us nourishment for our mind and our body and our spirit. And not only it's going to feed us, but it gives us tools, it gives us, like I say, we utilize the whole animal, nothing goes to waste. Right from the head, right from the antlers, right down to the hooves. We use the hooves for the ceremonial purposes, and we always tell them, you guys remember sausages? Well, we made sausages also, and we used it from the inner lining of the stomach, and so we utilize everything. Yeah.
I don't want to dominate this, so any other, there's all sorts of little impressions that came out of it. Maybe we'll just go around the room if that's all right. Magic, you want to start?
Well, there's a number of things being said which trigger my interest. Like, for example, promoting art produced by native artists. And in program I was involved, we have a number of native artists, especially two brothers from Belakula. Eventually they started their school there. And they were managing to, first of all, explain how the lines are coming. They were showing stick, which is of one end is thinner and thicker, so the lines are actually representing bending of that willow, or whichever stick. And then they gave fabulous lecture to the rest of the students, how the actually art is produced and what is behind it. And I thought we need more of this type of information. Because really, to sort of understand each other, we want to listen.
Maybe two brief comments. I would really like to see the protocol right from the very start, which we've done, and right through to the end, so that we understand more what's involved in protocol. I think that's really important, and it's also energizing as well. It's a wonderful experience. And I also like the idea, some of the carving projects, whether it was the school or whether it was one of the poles up at Whistler, where it was done in a public venue, a public place, and it was really, everybody who went by could talk, and everybody could learn a little bit, actually pick up on ads or pick up whatever. And particularly for the kids, but for the rest of us as well, because I think that's the chance of sharing what we're actually doing there. We're not just spectators, we're actually participants. So I would like to see something like that.
On that, one of the reasons why we built the canoe shed on Winnett Park is that the First Nations have a place to go and work on their canoes. And I don't know if you've ever been by there when they've had canoes in there and there's young people in there working, they got the music going, and just happenstance, one day I was with our MP and we were walking down there and she's like, what's that? I was like, well, it's a Heritage Canada funded building, and there the youth are there working on their canoe and they're showing the MP, but that space is intended to be that place where you can have an artist doing a welcoming pole in the public, on display. People can go and see its evolution, and so just keep that in mind in terms of maybe that becomes a bit of the program too, is that we set up a youth program in here to produce some art, and we have the space, and we can somehow facilitate. It's like something like that can be part of this as well.
And I would really like that to be so that it's in the communications mode, so that people know that it's actually there and it's happening, and they're welcome to come by and ask questions and talk, and bring the kids, and like whatever, if they're downtown going to the library, just
They had a lot of it
walk
during
across
the Olympics. They actually had those people, Squamish Nation and Lowat, carving all over the place during the Olympics. It was very cool.
Here in Squamish.
No, in the Sea to Sky, in all the whole, there was a Callahan, they were up in Callahan. I think there was one in Squamish too, actually.
In Vancouver too.
In Vancouver, Whistler, there was a couple. They were all over the place doing live art. I remember the specific in the Callahan, because They're talking to
Because
that
the
guy every
two-headed
time.
sea serpent, that house sound, that wasn't just Squamish Nation, First Nation. It wasn't just First Nation. We opened it to the community. And I think that's the reason why there's absolutely no graffiti on it. We unveiled that in 1996. And it's just been repainted maybe a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
But that was a
Entrance to House Sound Secondary School.
Oh, okay.
The carving over the top.
Yeah.
And the house post as well.
Yeah.
Sydney?
Yeah, no, today, a couple of key themes I thought, which are captured up in the slide, is some comments around like cultural space and the challenges of marketing for artists, and how that was felt and impacts. I thought one thing that was really prevalent, or that came out of it, was the concept of sharing history and heritage. And so I think reflecting back on what that means in the public art aspect, there's some really cool public art pieces that mix audio experiences with public art, so it might be something to consider. But there's a lot of great stuff out there, especially utilizing new technologies, hologram imagery, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of really interesting ways it could go if you want to sort of mix experience and public art into one. So that's just a side thought of my own. And then also the another theme that came out was the importance of passing on tradition and getting youth involved in regards to First Nations arts practice and traditions. As the table knows, the Arts Council does some youth programming as well. We have that grant opportunity coming up on Monday. So if we have any great ideas at this table now, I can actually include it for funding requests, just as an FYI. But whether that be, you know, a group of youth doing some carving in the canoe shed, or you know, extrapolating out of that. But, yeah.
Devin, do you want to share some thoughts?
A lot of what I heard was a lot of, or the responsibility of the trust that they were putting on us, and how I felt a real responsibility to honor that. And much like Sydney said, the cultural space, the sharing of spaces, and not just the sharing of space in kind of like that safe sharing of knowledge, but also of sharing physical space, whether it be through education or learning, teaching.
Thanks.
We've got quite a bit there. The only thing I would really add is there was, in my sense, a really strong message of, you know, wanting to continue with message around respect for the earth, stewardship of the earth, and as an artist, the what was said about the clarity of intention in the moment before the act of creating, or starting the process of creating, is really relevant to me as an artist, for sure. And then, as you said, the history, really wanting to be able to continue sharing the history.
Thanks. Toby?
Well, pretty much everything's been mentioned already, but one of the things for me being involved in the foyer gallery is the, and maybe possibly the immediate ability to provide some space for some art that may be a specific First Nations case in the foyer that would be semi-permanent or rotating or something like that, something that would help to give give some cultural space that represents first the Squamish Nation outside of Totem Hall. I mean, Totem Hall is filled with so much art that it would be nice to see some of it be on display in Squamish and rotate or something like that. So, I mean, that's just something that I can think of that, I mean, ideally I would like to have the big art center built within the next 6 months. So can you get that done?
I wish.
And, you know, and then have First Nations Museum be part of that, or, you know, as well as theater and whatever, so. And I just love the whole tradition of honoring the land, the air, the mountains, the trees first before any creation happens. So it's something we need to all do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, yeah.
Well, as a fabric artist, textile artist, I would love to see something also that incorporates the patterns and the designs of the Salish weaving. You know, the big wool hangings, because there's some absolutely stupendous things have been done that I've seen both in Whistler, and there was a number of huge panels done for the Bonaventure Hotel in Montreal.
Like years ago, right?
Years ago.
From the Squamish Nation?
Well, there was Salish,
I'm Salish.
and they were just spectacular. So I'd love to see something like that somehow incorporated. And then the basketry too, with cedar bark. I mean, that's another very strong tradition.
Because I know it's Wasson Mills. The mall, they hired one of the TFN members, and she did a humongous cedar basket.
Oh, yeah.
Like it was huge.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Which could be a secondary part of this whole thing, because that could not be put in outside. It would have to be inside something. Yeah.
What struck me listening to everyone speak was that they were very forward thinking and taking which I guess is what reconciliation is, and it was very heartening to have that conversation developing that way. So I thought that, because they were looking at the future and they were looking at the children, and I thought that was so important. And the other thing was, you know, the really good ideas that were coming forward were coming from previous problems of promoting their art, or getting connection, or being able to educate, or market, or whatever. And so not all of those things may necessarily be dealt with in this project as we go forward, but they shouldn't be ignored, and they should be added to a list of things that we should be aware of going forward as a committee. Whether it's something that ends up happening in the library, or whether there's some kind of conscious decision to make a site to promote artisanship of all sorts in the community, whether it's, say, through the farmers market, or some, you know, or the ocean front as that goes forward, or anywhere else. So that was one thing I was thinking of. One thing that nobody mentioned was the Squamish Lillock Cultural Center. And having interviewed a lot of the artists whose work is for sale in the gift shop there, you know, I know that the connections between both communities with the SLCC are strong, but with the Lillock people being, I guess, closer in a lot of ways, or there's just I mean, I'm totally willing to be corrected in this, but the Squamish Nation is sort of more south and looking southward towards Vancouver, and the Lillock people are very connected it feels like in a slightly bigger way with the SLCC.
I think from an employment point of view and stuff.
Yeah, it's
Just
yeah,
in
it's
Whistler in
just-
general,
it's
there's
that
more of a
way.
connection.
Yeah,
Squamish Nation
Whereas
also
Squamish
goes
Nation is
50
here in
a
south.
lot of the time.
Okay, yeah, and I mean, that's not something I know a great deal about, so I'm not trying to speak to that, but it's clear that there's a need here. And there's a need here that might also draw in the nation from North Van up as well. And, you know, and I don't know where the project is at Britannia Beach, but I remember when that was being discussed at the,
Tai Chang?
yeah, is that anywhere? Because that was there was a museum that was part of the whole shebang.
Never saw that part of the proposal.
Oh, okay.
It's a long way away.
Anyways, yeah, it's a long way away. So, but there's a need. So going forward, that's something we should be aware of, even if we don't proceed with it, is what I'm trying to say. One last thing I wanted to just bring up for awareness purposes is I was at the Checkmas Center last weekend, and the reconciliation pole was brought down, Upton's pole, because it needs to be, the base of it needs to be more secured. So Bob Brandt is working on that. He's
Bob Brandt?
is it Bob? Oh, no, not Bob Brandt. Sorry, what's his name? Bob Deeks.
Okay.
That makes more sense.
Bob Brandt?
Yeah, sorry.
Just gonna take a picture of it?
Yeah, that's just me. I'm getting my names wrong. Anyway, so they're working on that. So it's down at the moment, but he's offering them engineering advice and things. So it's
It's beautiful.
And I told the people there that what we were doing here. So the Checkmas Center is aware of that. And they have information about their own process of looking for funding and things like that. I think they'd be willing to talk to us about.
So, do you want to add anything more?
On my way home, I went to the library and I saw Jeff. Jeff was Sorka?
Cook.
Jeff Cook, yeah. And he was all pumped up, and I told him that we just came from a meeting with the elders, and he goes, I took a carbon with Art Harry. And he goes, you know, I would love to do like what they did up at Sea to Sky Gondola, you know, the Spirit Trail.
Oh,
And
yeah,
I says,
yeah.
And I says, well, I did that up there. And I says, he says he wanted to do carvings, and I says, you know what? They're gonna get stolen just as fast as they get up there. So I told him, I says, no. And then I says, what about history? History of what the trees meant to us, all the local resources that are around us, like the alder, the cedar, the fir, the maple, the vine maple, all of that. I says, they all have purpose, what they provided for us. And he goes, oh, that even sounds like a good idea. So he's gonna try to do that with Sorka.
That's cool. I like
Yeah,
it.
so
It's
there's
like
lots of
infectious now. So I'm hearing sort of two themes. We've got this theme about really trying to honor, promote the Squamish Nation art and their artists and their traditions, and educate and communicate and all that sort of thing. And then there's the whole other piece about how do we use art to communicate truth and reconciliation from that real history done you wrong point of view, and we want to acknowledge the truth and reconcile for the future. So there's sort of like a bit of two themes there. They could marry, or they could be, I think they're both important, obviously. The truth and reconciliation is still a more intangible, more challenging, and I'm looking for Suecia to help me out here, but a little more challenging concept philosophically, because it means such a different thing for so many different people, and it certainly means a different thing for Bob and Gwen and Shirley and everyone than it does to me or anybody else. So, but I think it's a worthy exploration. Like, I think there's a real provocative exploration we could do on that side of things that honors everything that the elders were talking about today. But maybe, I'm just spitballing here, looking for, but maybe this, and this is why I keep going on, we need more money, how do we get more money? And I'm going to talk to our MPA to see if there's any TNR money from the feds, and how can we take this, and we'll do budget later, but how can we take the little bit of money we have here and maybe leverage it into a couple different things, both honoring, communicating the art, the tradition of the Squamish Nation, but also trying to create those art pieces, or that art piece that really is provocative about making people think about Canadian history and how we have inappropriately treated our fellow human beings. So I think there's sort of two veins there. And I also just want to put the bug in your ear. We can break this out into different themes that are supportive of each other. We may, and I'm just spitballing here, and this is for committee to discuss, we may think, we want to commission a weaving thing from a Squamish Nation artist. We want to commission a reconciliation pole or some sort of pole like your brother did. And we want something that honors the purpose of the trees or something. And we actually commission those. Like we say, here's $15,000, $20,000. here, we can do that kind of thing and actually commission and go and find the artists through Squamish Nation connections to do the art. We can also do, we could take some of the money and do that. I'm trying to think that we have actually $150,000 enough, maybe some odd $1,000. That's just me. And then we can also still do the proposal call where we want that thing that makes us think, that makes us stop, that makes us acknowledge, that makes us look within, and that may connect nation artists with other artists, and may, that, leave that a little more, and I'm just spitballing. And that could be one big project, that could be 3 smaller projects. Anyway, that's just sort of where my brain was kind of going, because there's almost 2 things here, right? There's truth and reconciliation, and there's honoring the art of the people who have been here for millennial, upon millennial. So, anyway, any
I think
thoughts?
even with the funding, we probably can work on, I can work with Mom and do funding from Squamish Nation.
Yeah,
And then even try, we
Yeah.
can do funding on this side. So both sides of the table, we can go for funding,
yeah.
right?
Well, yeah, exactly. And if like, for example, if the district and the nation went together and tried to get funding from the feds on truth and reconciliation, I bet we have a good chance of success.
There's also the Canada Heritage Legacy grant.
Yeah, and when I say the feds, I mean sort of all those piles of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty
So,
significant.
after the last meeting in
There's piles of
December,
money.
I met with, is it Rachel from Biennale? Was that her name, Rachel?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then she asked me, she goes, so what do you think? Do you think the Vancouver Biennale work together with this too? And I said, oh, I don't know.
It's possible.
But that was a suggestion she suggested at the last meeting.
Yeah.
We met after this meeting.
I think they could, if they chose, they could complement something like this, but I think this is something that we need to do from a local level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean it's only going to be local artists or whatever, but I think that this needs to be really truly driven
Should be
by
managed as well.
the nation,
Maybe,
by this committee, by those,
Maybe the Biennale can, because their focus is national and international, usually. I mean, why not challenge those artists maybe involved up here to produce pieces complementary to what our aim is, and then really connect with the community that
yeah.
way.
Well, and I think, for example, when Biennale was here last time, their theme was, I have a dream. Did I get that right? Yeah. Maybe we suggested Biennale this time, it's truth and reconciliation.
Truth and reconciliation. I was, yeah.
And that makes me almost more interested in Biennale, if they actually would come in and actually complement something we were doing, and it really is thematic and important and relevant and valid for.
It would be interesting to see what some of the artists could come up with, especially if they are really thinking about where they
And
are.
international artists in terms
Yeah,
of how,
I think that would
what
be
that means to,
fascinating.
on a
As
global
long as
level.
there's enough together and there's a proper balance between the local people.
Yep.
Yeah, and the local artists and the local skills and all that good kind of stuff with anybody coming in. I just feel really strongly about that. This
Well,
should
and I
be
think that's why
established.
this part of the process is
The
always,
separation
will
could
be
protect
ours.
that. Like
Mhm.
keeping them separate but close, I would think would protect it. It would-
You're almost talking 2 levels of
Yeah.
art participation. Because you want a first class, international caliber for part of it, and that you also want to promote the local artist, which might almost be separate, but coordinated.
Thematically.
Yeah.
I don't know what it would look like. I love the idea of the Squamish Valley being canoe and looking at all the people and things and the animals and the creatures in the Squamish canoe kind of thing.
Yeah.
I like that idea of the symbolism of that. Of course, I think about Bill Reed and the.
On
I
that,
love canoe, but-
I'm not sure if I've told the committee about this. So the RCMP and the district have partnered to buy one of those truth and reconciliation canoes that they use for the journeys.
Fiberglass?
Big fiberglass ones,
Yeah.
yeah. They're about 25 grand once you buy all the life jackets
Yeah.
and the paddles and the canoe and the canoe. But one of the things I talked about with Jeff Christie, who's the inspector for the area, is that maybe we commission or we do a competition or something for the design, and we actually paint this thing through this program too, and put some art on this canoe that we're going to get. And I'll ask Jeff. Somebody put notes down.
Yeah.
Jeff, on when we may be getting when that canoe is going to be delivered. We just approved it through the budget, so.
What's the purpose of the canoe? How's it going to be used?
It's going to be used, so it would be used for a whole bunch of different cultural events, whether it's Aboriginal days, maybe we put a whole bunch of our staff and council in this canoe and we actually journey up the Mount Wine Channel, we go to Aboriginal days. It would be part of the RCMP police, they have a cultural journey that they do for 12 days or something.
Pulling together.
The pulling together, and so we would actually put some people in the, whether it's our staff or the RCMP, local RCMP, and we put a canoe together with youth to do the pulling together program, which does various canoe trips. I did one leg of it last year. CAO Linda Glenda and I went and did it with them in one of these big canoes. It would be a team building thing for our staff and nation staff, maybe do together, the RCMP. So it becomes a connection, a cultural connection point. It would be there if a community group wanted to use it, to do a team building thing for the day. If we wanted to go out in the canoe, we could do that.
Could we do recreation? I keep thinking back to the days before there were roads and all that good kind of stuff, and Squamish Nation and Squamish people coming from here and actually going down to harvest, you know, the sockeye salmon on the Fraser River. What did that look like? What did that feel like actually before there were roads, before they were all up? How did you move the whole community?
That's where you get a taste of it
When you do
in that community.
this pulling together is very much that.
We're living by how our ancestors did it, and you guys will get a taste of it. You guys get up early in the morning, go out with the tide.
You go with the tide.
And because some days we paddled for like 2 hours, 1 hour, some days we paddled 17 hours. Because we went from one village to another, it depends where our journey is. And those were on ocean going canoes.
Yeah. Well, we're getting a little off topic, but I just I love the enthusiasm. I just wanted to let you guys know that we'd made this investment and that
it is indeed paintable, like.
Oh yeah, there's quite some ornate paintings on these canoes.
Okay.
They're beautiful, some of them.
Mm-hmm.
But we could, I'll get a picture of what the canoe looks like. It's got the big front end ocean going thing up. From here to the door, maybe? Maybe
How many people does
it's
it
big.
hold?
Oh, you can put 20 some odd people in it, or something like that. It's a big one.
Depends what size.
It's a big other. They can be. I think
Yeah.
The
it's
little
20,
white one that I
24
got
people.
holds 9.
Yeah.
But that's a little one.
Yeah. No, I think this one's a good 20 to 25, 28 people ish. It's probably maybe not from here quite to the door, but pretty close.
Where's it going to be stored?
Maybe the canoe shed down here. Could be stored up the RCMP compound.
And who made it? That's what I was wondering.
They get made
Clippers.
somewhere.
Clippers and
Yeah.
Abbotsford.
Yeah, somewhere. I'm not 100% sure where they get made.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Can I add just a thought that some years ago, Bill Reed took a group of young people from Hardagwai and took them to Paris, and they were on a river paddling canoe. And so there are many different ways of creating showcase. The showcase is not necessarily permanent, but some showcases just documented becomes so important. For example, up on Gondola, there is this interpretive trail where you see various local First Nations people portraits, and you read a little bit about their history. And I think this is fabulous. So going that direction, definitely, when I think of one word, I think of showcasing.
That's what the Turtle Trail eventually, when I get there, we start pushing that too, because that needs to get to the next phase.
I don't know if you guys can see this, and Kelsey's going to yell at me. But that's sort of, like the canoe,
Yeah.
the pulling together is 30 different canoes. I kept saying boat and then I'd have to pay a lot of money because I get in
Yes.
trouble for saying boat. By the end of it, I think I had to spend like $150 to get myself out of trouble. And that's sort of, I think it's a bit bigger than that one, but that's sort of kind of what, and they can be quite beautifully painted and.
The journeys are annual now, I think, or are they?
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's no, it's
I
annual.
wrote a feature about it a few years ago.
Mhm.
It was in Squamish.
They have the ocean going one, which is the tribal journeys, and then they have the pulling together, which is local, that's just within BC, and every nation takes turns hosting it. And last year, Squamish Nation hosted it. And
Yeah.
they usually go like Penticton or West Bank or.
I can pass this around if people want to have a look. Anyway, I didn't mean to distract, we could go on and on, but I just wanted to add that to the mix.
I totally agree that I think we're dealing with almost two separate projects. There's the iconic landmark work with reconciliation in mind, and also what I'm hearing is a really strong desire to build capacity and exposure for young
An opportunity, yeah.
And I always remember during the Olympics, the ambassador, the Squamish Youth Ambassador Program, which was such a huge success.
Still going.
Is it?
Yeah, they still have, they take in youth and they train them for 3 months.
For 3 months. And so I'm just thinking, like, is there a way of making the traditional arts an important part of that?
Well-
And I don't know, like, doing a collaboration or a partnership or helping to that end to
Yep.
to
I think if we move towards program stuff, we're getting a little bit out of the scope of what this committee's, but maybe more in line with what the Arts Council and Visuals and some others can do in terms of the programming stuff. So just keeping people focused on the public art piece.
Just a point of information, the SLCC has been doing a youth program for, in traditional arts, in particular regalia and clothing. I wrote a feature about it last year. They had 3 young women making pieces that are going to be part of the museum.
You can
So
move
they,
it around.
it's started anyway.
They're doing live theater, so they're.
That's
making-
right.
Oh,
They're
cool.
going to be doing. They're going to be doing the story of
The legends.
of the community at Whistler. I'm going to say wrong. Spoegs.
And that's why I think if we go down this road of doing some major public art installations along Truth and Reconciliation and traditional Squamish Nation artistry and artists, there may be a whole programming piece around it that other groups might want to, like the theater group might want to go and engage with the youth to do a theater program in the summer. You know, like this may become bigger than just this room. Kind of cool.
I just wanted to share, I guess, what's turning to my brain after you mentioned the portraits, and what comes to mind for me is the bronze statues in Vancouver that are really famous, and how, if we're focusing on truth and reconciliation, and I mean, this is, again, just thoughts, if you guys can hate it, it's okay. But if there were perhaps immortalizing survivors of residential school in whatever medium, but it's a project, if you had that, could have an audio-visual and learning aspect as well as a preservation aspect around that. So you could connect an audio-visual experience with whoever or whatever you end up making a statue of. Ideally would be, or not ideally, but perhaps it could be a residential school survivor or someone of significant heritage within Squamish Nation, or even someone of lore. All these aspects could play into it, and those are your connecting themes. And then if you have them as individual pieces, you can make that project as small and as big as you want. So if you get funding in additional years, you can just add more and more figures. Again, this is moving down like a commission theme base versus a call theme, but I just thought I would share
Yeah.
what was in my head.
And it could be even how some of the stuff we write into the call too, just to make sure that we're stimulating the idea that this doesn't necessarily have to be a piece of metal or a piece of wood. It can be multimedia, it can be digital. We were talking about digital in my office earlier, and it can be audio, it can be experiential, connected to whatever kind of public art it might be. So I think that goes into how we write anything to make sure that we get the submissions that are being creative in that sense.
We have to decide whether we're doing an event or, like, we have to broaden out. We have to decide whether we're going to open it up very broadly for people, for artists who might be working in teams, for example, to create a project, or whether we're going to dictate more about what we want.
So maybe I'll just ask a pointed question till we get a yes or no. And we don't have to answer yes or no now, but is the committee open to using a portion of these funds? And I'm thinking we want to leverage this so we have twice the amount of funds. Commissioning something directly from a Squamish Nation artist, or two, or three, and doing a big piece that might be $60,000 or $70,000, big piece that is focused on truth and reconciliation and amendment, or however we want to articulate that. Can you see sort of doing a commission one? I think I'll explain a little bit where my brain is going is, I want to make sure that if we do an open call that we really are trying to make everyone think about truth and reconciliation, not just the nation or not just the white man or whatever, but that we are also honoring the nation and their traditional art through a specifically commissioned, and that's one of the things that came out today is that people always want to pay as little as they want to pay, just for you get $20 an hour and that's all I'll write my check for, as opposed to really honoring the art and actually doing a commissioned work. And it might be 2 or 3 commissioned. It might be a big commissioned work, maybe there's a $30,000 or $40,000 commission work and there's 2 $10,000 commission works for different, but anyway, I just wanted to sort of throw that out there. Is that something that the committee's open to or interested in, or you just want to go to competition?
Describe competition.
So the way, for example, the other projects we've done an open proposal call, and we've, like the ones with those metal salmon around town, it was called Connecting Communities. We put an open call out there. We had a variety of artists submit proposals, and then the committee adjudicated the proposals and said, we picked this one. That artist was then tasked with putting their art up. So it actually goes out like a competition. An open competition. And that's how we've done, the banners were done that way, the art for the hydro boxes. So far we haven't commissioned anything, we've done only open competitions. We've put parameters around the open competition, or themes, pretty broad-based, but themes around the open competitions. But thoughts, Adrian?
Well, if we call ourselves public art, we have to know, we have to have some idea where that commission would go. Because if it's going to storage, or is it going to be hidden, doesn't serve the full
No,
purpose.
it would be absolutely specific. We want something at this spot.
Right. So this is
Or
the
at these
starting-
3 spots.
I would say starting point.
Oh, but for example, with the sorry, Meg, I'll go, with the fish, the salmon ones that
right.
Christine and Nick did, we told people to just, these are the parameters, has to be public, owned by the public, the district of Squamish, because then we don't have to get permissions and stuff. We set some parameters, but they said, okay, we want one here and one on the dike and one down here, and they actually chose the locations for that. We helped them a little bit in the end, but ultimately that might be part of the proposal called, it must be on public land, and it must be accessible to the public
Yes.
and relevant to that space.
If we were to commission, for example, a pole, the design would be up to the artist, and we put it in OCM Park, someplace like that, could we then say, okay, we ultimately in the build-up, maybe not this phase, but we can do a surround of I don't know, blocks or something, and we could add benches around in the circle to honor the circle at some point, so that we could create a space which is a sacred space, which goes through all the rituals and protocols, but it's a phased development, but the start would be perhaps a pole, perhaps a canoe, perhaps, I don't know. but that would be commissioned. Can we think in those kinds of terms?
Absolutely, I think it gets outside of our budgets here, and we'd have to then talk to council about, and staff about how we program around, but in theory, yeah, absolutely.
Because it doesn't even have to happen right now, but the location of that would be important, and making sure that the land around it so that it could be developed.
Yep, that always can be part of the process, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes it beyond to the next step of costs. How you doing? We're just talking about the major project discussion, and we had a conversation with the nation elders earlier, and so we're just evolving that conversation into which direction. And I think the reason why I'd like to push the committee to sort of really get a direction after today, because I think if we really want to sort of aim for something for later in the year, we need to get this ball rolling in the next little while. So, Adrian, you look like you're mulling something then.
Sorry. No, I'm trying to think of sort of parameters in terms of how many parameters do we really want to put on the artist, and how to firstly do that as well as come up with something that as a group we like, or we have that it causes thinking. So that's always been an issue in art, is that you want to leave the artist to create, and then, but we also, there's certain things we can't have or shouldn't have. And that's going to be a very complicated and difficult line to walk. And so I just always have a little bit of trouble thinking about,
Yeah, here, how do you want to come down? Come down here.
and that doubles when it comes to truth and reconciliation and otherwise, and generally. So I'm just sort of thinking about that.
Yeah. I don't know, Devin, do you have an example of one of the proposal calls we put out? So just to remind people how, they're pretty loosely framed. The one we did for the fish was literally, the theme was connecting communities, and people just brought back their ideas.
Yeah.
And we said it needs to be solid, so it can't get vandalized. Needs to be in at least 2 spots, I think we said. It was just general, but we didn't put any other parameters on it.
I'll probably go out to the public art network of people out in the Lower Mainland. There's a great network of people who do this full time, as opposed to
Yeah.
what the current.
Oh yeah, there's all sorts of templates
Vancouver
out there.
sent some over before, I think.
Yeah, Vancouver
Oh,
sent,
okay.
oh yeah, no,
Yeah.
staff has a whole bunch of templates,
Okay.
yeah. Carrie should have them, or Matt,
Yes.
or,
Would you want to limit the calls to, say, artists within the Squamish Nation, or within First Nations artists within BC? Set that kind of a geographical, Coast Salish.
it's up for discussion, absolutely.
That to me should be part of it.
And modern or traditional,
Yeah.
that's another part of it
Well, it
too.
could be either. It's
Yeah.
up to the artist if that could be.
Mhm.
I'll give you my perspective, and I'm totally looking for other people's. I don't know if I'd want to limit it, because I think
Yeah.
we're really looking for collaborations. We're looking for
Yeah.
something that's obviously honors and respects and provides reconciliation and truth to the nation, but there's this whole other, like, Canada's a big place that needs to figure its shit out, right? Did I say that in public? I'm so sorry. So, like, I don't know if that's why my brain was going, why don't we commission some pieces, or make it something specific to nation artists, so we can really honor the
Yeah.
integrity of their art, and then we do something else that is a little more broad-based and really.
So in other words, the bigger scale, the bigger project would be Squamish Nation, and the little
Or-
ones would be open to the public.
Or either, however we divvy it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things that having an Inukshuk for a national event made sense, okay, for the Olympics, the Inukshuk. It did not make sense to have that for Squamish.
No.
It just doesn't. So
No,
I really
it's
do
not
think it's
relevant.
got to, from my perspective, other people may disagree, it really has to be rooted in this valley.
Yeah, proper protocol should be Squamish Nation.
Oh, in terms of protocol, absolutely.
Artists I'm talking about.
Yeah. And I think it would be interesting and perhaps useful to have a Squamish Nation artist, or however we frame that, that's working in conjunction with, I don't know, young people, or working with a non-Indigenous artist to collaborate, like on a project, because this is supposed to be about reconciliation, which is two parties.
Oh, it's like what we did with the two-headed
Yeah.
sea serpent, right? It wasn't just Squamish Nation.
Absolutely.
We
Yeah, I
agree to the community.
Yeah.
And when Will Upton was building his, having his art school carved, it was covered and it was right by where the children ate lunch. So, like having it at the shed is one thing, but just that ongoing access with the public, watching it as it was coming out of the wood was, he liked it. I interviewed him, and the Checkpoint Center liked it too. The kids loved it.
My thought was, yes, and certainly they've done that up at Whistler as well. The bowl is up
Yeah.
at the Roundhouse, and a number of different places. And the one actually over that's in front of Totem Hall as well. That was in a public venue. But I'm thinking, is it possible to frame it so that we actually have a Squamish Nation artist and a non-Indigenous artist collaborating on a project that then symbolizes, not only, but symbolizes the hope for reconciliation, that we actually work together.
It's a very good
I think
idea.
that's
Well, I think that's
Great.
critical to it,
yeah.
but I don't want to prescribe it. I think I'm sort of leaning on what Adrian said a bit. I think if we prescribe too much, we're not going to tease out the most provocative or the most interesting ideas in these collaborations. But I think, for me, if I was to evaluate a project, collaboration, number one. You got to meet that criteria.
And there are a lot of non-Indigenous artists working with Indigenous artists, like Susan Point already in their workshops. So that is happening, and so I think I agree.
Yeah.
Because Rick's son, Colacton, James, he always collaborates with, I think she's Asian,
Right.
and they work together, and they
Yeah.
do
Neat.
pieces together.
A good example is that the big boat by Bill Reed, the collaboration was between the number of people who were not Haida. So, like Joe Trammell, for example, was applying the green shoe polish for the patina, so you can smell this in the airport.
Yeah.
I think Henry Vickers had a Spanish guy who was preparing all the boards for the gallery in Tofino, all the hand dancing. We worked with him for years.
Yeah, 'cause I think if we go and we want some authentically Squamish Nation art, that's one piece, and then we want a truth and reconciliation piece or pieces, almost two veins. And I can see the one Squamish Nation art, obviously Squamish Nation artists are, and however they want to collaborate, that's great. And the truth and reconciliation has to be founded in what it means to our valley. But I don't know if I want to limit it to just artists that live in the valley. Like, I think it has to be meaningful, you know. But we are part of a broader Canadian context that created residential school. We didn't have residential school here. We had people that live here that went to residential school. We didn't actually have one in the Squamish Valley. So there is a bigger Canadian context, but it has to be rooted locally. I get what you're saying, Meg, but I don't know if we necessarily want to limit it. Although certainly in the criteria of evaluating the proposals that come out in, depending on the proposals, and if something's close, you're going to say that local guy is getting the job, of course, that type of thing. And how is that relevant to us locally, and how is it helping us achieve our goals? Truth and reconciliation is part of the evaluation process as opposed to the criteria process. Does that make sense? That's how I view it though.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing two separate projects then.
Yeah.
That's what and that's
So do we
just
have a
totally
priority in
what,
terms of how we do that?
that's the conversation, but that's sort of what I was hearing, I think Anne echoed that too, is that I'm hearing, let's honor the weaving, the welcoming figures, let's honor that real traditional and showcase that Squamish Nation art. And I'm looking for Swayze to nod a little bit. But I'm also hearing Truth and Reconciliation is a different, possibly a different project from that in terms of on a philosophical level. And maybe I'm overcomplicating things.
Because if the truth and reconciliation is really the theme, then I suspect, given the alignment of the political stars and funding sources, that there's probably more money available for that right now, rather than there is simply for doing a showcase for all the different skills of
That's part of it, yeah.
Squamish Nation. So that may be something that we want to think about.
Right, so maybe we do prioritize the Truth and Reconciliation project because of.
Well, let's talk about money. Let's just skip down to budget maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
Just if we can get an overall budget. Now, council did approve a slight increase in the annual budget that this committee gets. So we were at 50,000, it's 62,000 this year. So what's in our kitty?
So of the 62, prior to the 62 being approved, the makeup or the breakdown of the 50 grand in past has gone 15 for major projects, 10 for maintenance, and 25 has rolled over.
So we should have 50,000 in major projects right now then,
Yes.
from the last 2 years, and we add and we add a portion of the 62 to that 50.
Correct. So
That's why I was saying the 82 number today, it's because I was taking a little bit, it would be 75, it was another 25 grand, it'd be 75, because we got another $12,000, we have a little bit extra there.
yeah.
If we just stick to 15K minor projects and another 10K into maintenance, at some point I think the maintenance one, if we haven't tapped it down, we just don't want to keep adding to it every year and just ballooning out a maintenance budget.
Yeah.
But I think there's only 20 grand in there now, or 10 grand or something. So.
Of that 25 that becomes, it really, you guys have treated it as an annual budget of 25 grand, and
Yeah.
it goes towards grants, maintenance, minor projects.
Yeah, so if we have, let's do 25, so we have 75 plus the additional 12. I'm just saying we'll take the extra money this year and put it into this big project. Help me, 75, 90, 87. I don't get it math. Carried like
We
5
agree,
things when I only
87.
need to carry 1, but that's okay. So we have 87 grand in our little kitty. I'm looking to Sydney because she's the grant writing queen.
She is quite impressive at it.
Could we double that money?
Yeah.
In short order? Like
yes.
in 2 months?
In 2 months, likely not unless it's private, not in that size of cash. To get anything like over $50,000, you're looking at probably a 4-month turnaround, at least, if not 6.
Okay, well, let's say 50,000, so we're at 120-ish, 130. That's a good chunk of money.
Alice, what conditions might Squamish Nation be willing to come into a project and co-partner?
We would just have to compete within our own nation members if everyone wants to do the TRC, right? Because ours has to go in front of chief and council. But if we, say we do it as a team, this table and their table, we get together and.
I think that's where the leverage is if we jointly go and make an application to Heritage Canada, blah, 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 as the nation and the district, that's where the power of leveraging the funding might be. Is not necessarily in saying, does the nation have money? I don't think I think it's more in the partnership to leverage funding for it. And we can use this money to help leverage that. Well, let's make a bit of a goal to see if we can get at least 50 grand more, either through our personal connections, you know, maybe Mr. O'Dane or Mr. Matthews. Jack Matthews supposedly is quite the art connoisseur, so maybe they want to put some money into this. Or Van City or federal funding, but maybe we can collectively see if we can double this money in the next little while.
So how would we do that with paperwork from this committee, or like what?
Well, I think individually we may have our own contacts that may,
Yeah.
you never know. You know Mr. O'Dane?
I know him, I'm not sure he knows me.
And then maybe Sydney and I talk about how, and Soacia talk about how we can leverage some federal funding, and Devon leverage some federal funding.
I get my brother Dale to help.
Talk
He's
with
good with
our
that.
MP's office sooner rather than later.
You know what, I would call into the pan, yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I know she's away and then she's back.
Yeah, exactly, she's not here yet, right now, but, yeah, no, I'll talk to Pam directly for sure. And she's actually been really good about
Yeah.
acting like that on some stuff, so.
Is it useful to actually have a plan before you go to funders, or do you go to funders with?
Yeah, go
You
ahead.
could do it in two ways. Through the grant, the project, or the funding aspect I'm thinking of right now is that you do have to present a project. So we should actually have more or less a project outline to go to them. However, with that conversation with the MP's office, it might be that the project is we intend to put a call to artists, and essentially the end goal is going to be realizing a project of X magnitude. And we have to articulate all that in the grant, but that the call to artists is part of the project that we write for, essentially. It's possible I would look to talking to Canada Heritage in terms of their thoughts on that. It's always prudent before just throwing the application in there, because you never know, they might have different. But generally, with my experience, if a specific MP's office supports a grant in general, then usually it's more or less successful, so.
So I'm thinking it's a significant amount of money, and we can actually do significant projects in both of these themes, if that's what the committee's thinking.
I just had a question. Does anybody know how much the poll at UBC cost by Jim Hart at all? The reconciliation poll? Because I don't, but it's an extraordinary piece. I mean, it is massively monumental scale.
I don't know, but I think I knew what, I think Halakton's whole project was under 30 or something.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Which I thought was an astoundingly good price.
Yeah, I think it was quite a bit under.
Yeah, like 22 or something like that,
yeah.
that in my brain.
Something like that, yeah. And as I said, that they would probably be very willing to talk to you about their experience of not necessarily about protocol, although I'm sure they know a lot about that. Sarah Bainbridge,
Yeah.
I would try her, or Kathy.
Yeah.
But yeah, they'd be happy to share that.
Yeah, I have talked to them about it too, so. How are we doing? Like, I'm always sensitive to me pushing too much what I want, so I want to make sure everyone.
Just a thought too, I mean, if we do have, if we want to do other projects that were specifically commissioned for Squamish Nation artists, I mean, we do have a $15,000 minor projects budget as well. So just throwing that out there in terms of budgetary thoughts. Yeah. Because did we do the hydro projects from minor project budget? Yeah. So like small things like that. It wouldn't be, $20,000 commission piece, but it's just an idea.
One thing I don't know if I mentioned it last time, I'm the chair of the hospital district board, and I was at a meeting over in Seashell. And the hospital foundation in Seashell has a whole public art program for their hospital facilities. And they have public art all over the the Seashell Hospital. Did I show you that?
Yeah, you circulated it to everyone, and it's
Okay.
actually on the agenda under community partnerships.
Oh yeah, that's right. We'll just hold that thought then.
Yeah.
Right, it's in the agenda. So, how do you want to move forward?
Can we just table this as we go through a few hours and then come back to it?
Sure.
Pick it off the table and after we've cogitated a little bit?
I would just maybe ask that we start thinking about locations. I mean, I can always
I don't know if we need to specify locations other than, we might want to say downtown or near or on a traditional First Nations village site or that's on public, like certainly it has to be in the public realm,
Yeah.
built environment. It could be indoors, could be outdoors, I guess, theoretically. But I don't know if we necessarily need to go, we want something here.
Preferably visible.
Yeah.
Does
And
it
that
need-
might be part of the, that might be part of the process that Devin goes through. The artists tend to start to talk to Devin, and they might say, hey, what are you thinking? And Devin might say, well, you want to put in the parks, there's 5 different parks, go have a look at them, and
Yeah.
that becomes just part of your facilitative role.
I would really like to see it in the downtown area because we're trying to build the downtown and create that rather than seeing it more remote. Because I think the symbolism again is really important for the downtown.
And we own a lot of park downtown, Lynette Parks, obviously.
And having, like several kind of areas here and trying to build an art node and center, I think makes sense. And I don't know if it would be hugely restrictive, for artists if we say we really want to have it in this relatively smallish chunk.
Anyone disagree with it going downtown or setting that?
Depending on the project, because we have to be a little bit open-minded.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a fantastic project which would be good by the entrance to the town.
Yeah,
Maybe
that goes
by-
through Rose Park,
yes.
or it could be, yeah.
Yes.
I don't, yeah.
So I wouldn't say,
Yeah.
no.
I think depending on the submissions we
Depending,
get, we
yes,
can,
depending on
we
the
can
Yeah, I mean,
steer it
we-
in certain directions.
We do have to evaluate based on how many people will see it and how many
Yes.
people
Yeah,
will
yeah,
have a reaction to
absolutely,
it. So that has to
absolutely.
be one of our,
It
as
has to
well
belong
as
to
our,
everyone.
having
Visibility
close,
would be-
yeah, visibility, collaboration. We're gonna
Yeah.
have to come up with these evaluation critiques and,
Yeah.
the amount of people that are gonna see it has to be one.
Absolutely,
And
and
I
how many
think
people it
that, I think
impacts.
that sort of forces people to be downtown or in a major center of,
Yeah.
population.
Yeah, I mean, someone might come up with something absolutely fantastic that, yeah, don't want to prejudge it. Where were we?
We were going to move on to a couple of other things
Oh,
and
yeah.
then come back.
Thank you. Any more budget stuff you want to talk about?
No, I think it's pretty clear that no.
So we're going to continue with the 15 minor projects, 10 maintenance, and the rest going into the big major projects fund. Okay, which brings us up to 87,000-ish in there. And as I think Sydney said last time, we don't have to spend it all this year. We can spend it all this year. We can try to leverage it for more money.
Thank you for getting a little increase kind of thing. I know it's not huge, but it's
Yeah.
appreciated.
Well, it was originally when the public art policy was created, it was actually written as 1% of capital works projects that are being done by the district. In that first year that the public art committee was being formed, there was actually not a lot of public infrastructure projects going forward. So it was actually, so that 1% is a number that goes like this. Depending on, we might have $15 million of projects one year and get $150,000, and we might have $2 million one year and get $20,000, right? So the first 3 years we did 50. This year we decided to go up, but I think it'd be nice to actually sort of have maybe a bit of a steady. And if there's a banner year, then yeah, we do the percentage, because I don't want it to go below, you know what I mean? So there's a risk in this, but it was helpful this year.
Want to, I guess, ask a question, and I hope that it's appropriate. But is there space within a rezoning application that contributing to a large major public art project could be considered part of an amenities package for a developer?
Yeah, public art can be considered part of an amenity package according to our policy. It's not specified. I think where I like to go with public art is if a developer's coming forward, public art in that development is just good business sense and part of good design and good community building, and the developers do it, period. And we had, I don't know if you're in the committee, we had Councillor Deal here in our first year, and she talked about how if you just do it so developers are doing public art, and we actually had this debate at council the other day, you only get public art in new developments. Because they just want to put public art where they're selling homes, because they know it helps them sell homes. And you don't get public art in the general built environment that's already there, or in older neighborhoods, and then you end up with these have and have not communities. And so the whole idea of this is that we ensure that it's not just new developments that are getting public art, but we do get a general kitty from the Community Amenity Fund that we could, in theory, we allocate X amount to affordable housing right now, because that's really the topical issue of the day. 75% of CACs goes to affordable housing. But that other 25%, so for example, the Polygon proposal, it's $2.4 million cash contribution to CACs. 3/4 of that is going to go to affordable housing, but a quarter of $2.5 million is going to go to a general fund, which could in theory go to public art. And so if the Public Art Committee, for example, got 3 really good proposals, and we want to do all 3, you could go to council and say, look, we have an opportunity to do something spectacular. We know you have community amenity funds. We want to see a bit of that. Or we'd like you to consider, I'm being a little facetious, but we'd like for you to consider. So, I mean, that's theoretically there already, but you understand what I'm saying about public art through CAC and public art through just good building design and
Right,
making
of
sure
course.
that every community is benefiting from, every development or neighborhood is benefiting from
Yeah,
public
and I
art.
understand that is like the role of this committee, that to ensure public art is spread through our entire community, enjoyed by all, and not just in any one development. I guess my comment was just specifically towards the major project and finding more additional funding particularly quickly for it as an idea.
Yeah. The other thing with CACs is developers don't like to release their money until they've made some money. So a lot of these things, the CACs don't actually kick in until X amount of the project has actually been built, and they've been able to sell X amount to actually make some money to actually pay off the CACs. They don't generally put money up on the table up front, unfortunately. And we're sort of in that development process where people think it's gone crazy, but the actual CAC money hasn't actually started to really trickle in yet, even though there's tons of promised, or a significant amount promised. We don't actually have it in the bank. We have some of it, but not a lot of it. Is that fair to say, Dan? So that's budget. Community partnerships. So yeah, I did talk to a couple board members on the hospital board, hospital foundation. We're going to bring the idea of seeing if there is a public art program that they want to do through the hospital and through the hospital foundation. So just thought I'd bring that. But I think that's sort of reflective of how we may want to start to branch out into these partnerships to help other public institutions, whether it's school district, the hospital, or Vancouver Coastal Health or something, start to permeate public art into a lot of these different public forums, and not just the district's built environment. So just thought I'd bring that up and see if we can, and like in the nation is obvious, and another obvious.
Well, that was going to be my question actually, is can we include in those discussions of partnerships, Squamish Nations artists
Absolutely.
also have opportunities for those kinds of venues as well.
Absolutely. If you look at the stuff in Seashelt, it's almost all First Nations art. A lot of it's First Nations art in the hospital. A lot of it. That's pretty cool. Do you have that? Did I send that? If you have it over there, you can pop it up, like postcard so I just want to put that bug out in your ear in terms of, are there other partnerships that we want to, like the Hospital Foundation, we may want to start to see if there's an insidious way we start to.
Squamish terminals.
Could be, yeah.
I don't have it.
Okay.
There's Quest as well.
Quest is a great one too.
Quest.
Devin, you want to talk about Mosaic?
Sure. Before that, do you want to go back to Biennale?
Oh yeah, did we skip that?
We skipped.
Okay, but I was trying to get you to talk, and so I could look something
for a
up.
little bit, absolutely. So just to touch on the Mosaic, to confirm, nothing has happened yet, as there was the major snow dump. But I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page as it comes to restoration plans. I believe a portion between $10,000 and $15,000 will be, hopefully go through the budget cycle so that we can make restoration plans and remediation plans. So what I've heard from this committee so far has been that we will restore the wings for approximately $4,000. So that should be considered in budget under minor projects. We will remove the center portion and replace it with concrete. The center portion with the possibility of it being moved somewhere in the park to be displayed. Or, and then the potential also for colored concrete to match, to connect, to join.
the wings,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So, just one question as I've been thinking about this that I don't have answered is, do we think that the center portion should be restored prior to removal, or an attempt to restore?
Prior to removal?
Prior to removal. There is the risk, as we know, that once we start to remove the section, it
Right.
could just,
Yeah. It could just
Fall
fall
apart.
to pieces.
yes.
So, Catherine, are we thinking we remove it and then restore it, if it's restorable?
I think that would be less heartbreak in case
All that work
the
just-
inte-
yeah.
in case the integrity of it has already been compromised by the weather
Mhm.
and the machinery and everything.
I do want to say, staff literally the next day put those rubberized mats, did I say this at the last meeting?
You
Rubber-
did, but
Yeah, it was just
It was
so
great.
responsive, I
Yeah,
thought, I
and
was
it
so
was great.
impressed, it was
Yeah,
great.
it was
And it's
great.
perfect.
It's been very helpful to have the voice of the committee to support things.
I think having them in
Mhm.
to talk, just so that they understand that we care, we're not trying to make their lives hard. It was great.
So
I'm not trying to
what's
make
the
the laws
budget
hard.
figure for the possible restoration of the middle portion?
An additional 1,000, 1,500.
How thick is it again? The base and the.
We don't know.
That's the problem.
I think it's about 4 inches, 4
Right.
inches of concrete.
Okay.
And I think it's also got the
Rebar,
rebar in
yeah.
it.
Oh, yeah, the
So it
rebar.
shouldn't totally crumble.
Yeah.
It will need to be cut.
Yeah, we need to cut with a saw,
Yeah,
cut out and then lift it.
Did we sorry, I might have missed it. How much is it to lift and move?
We don't have that price yet.
I personally think, I mean, because it's hours of work, right? Hours and hours of work to restore the central section.
Yeah.
I personally, if we're moving it, I would identify exactly what we're moving, like that, or shape, or are we cutting through some of the mosaics?
Yeah.
And then move it and restore it and then replant.
Yeah.
That's my feeling. And having my only main experience of this is when I was studying in Italy and watching Roman mosaics being shifted and moved. So it's a little different.
That's more experience than anyone else at the table.
And I did not touch any of them, but my instructor did. She was a Roman mosaic restorer, and so I would move it and then restore it, because also, depending on how heavy it is, it could be brought inside maybe and restored.
Inside, yeah.
Oh, interesting. I hadn't considered that.
So yeah, I mean, it just depends on how heavy it is and the practicalities of that.
Okay.
So that might be more pleasant work. The
So
shed. the
we
new
should
shed.
get a price on how much to move it, lift it, move it.
I'll get with ops, because they were
Yeah.
spearheading they thought that they could do a portion of the work, so I'll get with them to put some prices on.
Awesome.
Does it make sense to do it as if it was a capstone to the arch, and actually instead of having straight lines, because
Yeah.
your sidewalk is straight,
Yeah.
have them on a little bit
Yeah.
of an angle there?
Yeah.
And then the other thing, thinking as
That's-
a millwright in terms of how do you do that, they're gonna have to do some digging and removing of some of the sidewalk
Yep.
in order to be able to get right underneath that piece to lift it.
Yeah, it does make sense. I mean, I'm a little concerned about, like, with the rebar and the cement and the crack through the center.
The middle of it,
The center, I'm concerned that the mosaic will fall to pieces when you try and lift it, because even with the rebar, right? Because the rebar is there. Rebar can be unbending for the sake of the mosaic too, right? So you cut through the cement and the rebar, or the concrete and the rebar, and then lift it, and the top, and just the jiggling of the top and the fact that there are cracks in it could mess the top mosaic layer. So it's hard to.
Well, I think we want someone who does this,
Yeah, for
with all
sure.
due respect to ops, I think we want someone who does this to do it.
I mean, I'm not volunteering, and I just have an idea.
Because
about
they'll know
I
how
haven't
to
done it.
see if something's about to collapse. You know, I think if we can find someone who knows how to do this, kind of lifting out.
Or even just for advice, if nothing else. Because like I
Yes.
said, I found one restorer and they're in Missouri or someplace.
Yeah.
Like one really serious monumental mosaic.
Can't you get your friend from Italy to come over?
Yeah,
I love it, she's wonderful.
yeah, okay.
Okay, so we need a little more information about
I'll go.
lifting and,
So what if this does cost 20 grand?
well, we have 20 in the maintenance budget. We might not want to use it all. We'll have 30 after this year.
Might have to do it in stages.
Might have to do it in stages. We might have to go to council and say, do you have some contingency?
Yeah, I mean,
We
right,
might decide to take a little bit of that extra 12 we just got to do it. So we have a little bit of money.
Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely remove it first and see what the base looks like.
Okay.
And then see how the mosaic does after as you're removing it. You want people who are gonna be very tender with it, you know, relatively speaking.
And before it gets touched, is it been photographed? Like,
Yeah,
Oh, we
like
will
record
that
the hell
be
out
part
of
of
it.
the whole
Yeah.
thing.
yeah.
Absolutely.
I've taken, not beauty shots,
Yeah.
I mean, I've taken
Yeah.
like extensive close-up.
Well, because I'm thinking if it crumbles to bits, then there's no point in restoring it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, basically that's the
So
case.
we put up a plaque with the digital
Picture,
photo
yeah.
or, you know,
Yeah,
the
we can
picture
figure all
of
that
it.
stuff out.
We all know,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, some photographers might wanna do it just for their own sake as a historical.
Yeah.
We
Historical record.
might want something more than your
My,
smartphone.
no, I
Yeah.
use the good camera.
Oh, wow.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll get a little bit more information about the lifting and, yeah.
Was there any comment from staff in terms of the, joining the edges and the colored bands and that kind of thing? Was that a doable or no conversation yet around that?
No conversation other than it's a good idea, and when Ops and I look at this project, when we sit down,
Yeah.
we'll consider that.
Have a look at that.
Can I get further information? I don't understand.
The colors?
No,
No,
I understand the
the
colors.
capstone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Keystone.
Sorry, keystone. Keystone is correct. In an arch, you have like in the center of it, you don't have straight pieces, you have them beveled.
Rhombus.
Kind of holds both sides.
Yes.
And so it's the only thing that holds the arch from falling down,
I understand.
okay? So
Yeah.
I don't know exactly where that would be, given what's the need of
Yeah.
district in terms of the sidewalk and the
That's what she's
actual.
talking about.
Uh,
There's a center
Here.
point in the circle and.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yeah,
and,
so it's
and
not-
this
But the
piece is the whole
path-
piece that holds an arch together.
Yeah,
But it's
The
not.
shape and the purpose of that.
So we could do the cut like that, right?
and
But also, the thing, my main concern about doing the cut like that is that actually the mosaics are kind of like this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's my
So
only
you're gonna
thing, and are we
chop
cutting
through
the
the-
hell out of some mosaics that we might want to preserve?
Okay.
But
so
it
that's-
needs to be a straight line.
Does it?
It needs to be a straight line according to staff and Bob's presentation.
Okay.
Because they
Just
can't,
wanted-
they can't go around like that. It would be a total nightmare to try and, yeah, I
Yeah.
think so.
Yeah,
They really couldn't do it.
okay,
So I was trying to
Well-
honor that.
yeah, that's fair enough.
I don't think ops could do it. I think someone could do it, that would take more time. and-
It'd be very,
But it
you
would
could
be
do it, it'd be
difficult.
very slow. You might
Yeah.
even have to do it in 3 sections, for example.
Let's have a closer look, we could hypothesize to this
Yeah,
together. Let's have a
for sure.
closer look, see, maybe even draw out where we think it should be ideally and where it might be, if we do straight lines. Figure out if we can do the rainbow colors to create the continuity, at least
Yes.
across the path between the two sides. And we'll get some analysis on what it costs to lift. and who might be appropriate to do it. If we can get an expert to sort of guide our staff in doing it, that might be enough.
It might
And
be-
at some point, we may just go, if it crumbles, that is the universe telling us something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's part of the story of the structure.
Yeah.
Don't we have some rainbow paint left over from the crosswalk?
Yeah.
I
I
know.
was thinking that rainbow paint might be a really good idea, but it might be interesting to actually, in the concrete itself, have pigment, so then as it wears down, you don't wear the paint off, because it's actually in the concrete. I don't know if it's doable. But, or
It's
the
doable.
cost of
Color
it, you know.
It's totally
Color-
doable.
It's
Yeah,
totally-
But I think
color
it's,
coded.
it's
Yeah.
just a little bit
You can color
more
concrete,
fiddly.
no problem.
Yeah, it might cost a little more, but it's doable. Thank you, Devin. Back up to Biennale. We didn't really talk too much about Biennale last week. So just general thoughts about, they didn't really make a monetary ask, did they? Did they ask for a certain amount?
Yeah, for
They did.
four,
They did.
for artists.
What was it again?
$15,000 per artist.
Oh, this is for the
So it's,
residents.
sorry, 5,000 per artist, and they're looking at 4 artists.
That's right. Yeah.
During the summer months up at Quest
Yeah.
for LiveWorks residency case.
Do you think it's worth, if we're really serious about, did they have a theme yet for Biennale?
I don't know. Good question.
Didn't hear one.
You know, maybe it's worth the committee writing a letter corresponding with Biennale to say, look, we are focused on truth and reconciliation. And if Biennale has the same theme, then we're open to, just
Is there a
spitballing.
possibility to partner with?
Or I wouldn't even call it that, I would almost keep them separate but connected. But
Are there some artists whose work would lend itself to the concept? Would it complement what we're trying to achieve here?
that's sort of where I'm going, and then their residency people would come and their
Yeah,
themes
connect
are,
and-
just like I Have a
and
Dream
learn,
is the
right?
theme, TNR is the theme for this one.
I wish we'd talk to the elders about that too, because again, it's building that relationship between the artists. And again, it can be done, obviously, but between the artists and the elders and the stories, so that it's rooted and it's valid.
Yes,
Is-
and there's many reconciliations happening all over the world, right? So if you get somebody else from Brazil, there's plenty to talk about there. You get someone from Australia, or, you know, maybe there are some international indigenous artists who are part of the Biennale this year, I don't know.
Do they have their artists selected?
I have no idea, I have no idea.
They probably do.
So, but I think the conversation with the elders is an ongoing conversation, it's
Yeah.
not just this one-off, this is gonna be a
Yeah.
fundamental part of how we're moving this thing forward into the future. So do you think that's a place to start with Biennale, is just say, look, this is what we're focused on, what are your themes?
And I would like to maybe add, and maybe it could go into the letter as a Craven journalist, that this is an interesting idea and a connection of that kind, and would probably get attention. I
Oh, yeah,
hope.
we'll craft it, you can write the letter. if you
Sure.
want.
I'll
sign
edit
the
it.
letter
I
if you
can
want.
edit it. That's what I do.
Is that a good place to start with them? You think? Does anyone just simply not want to pursue anything with Biennale?
No, I'd love
Is the door still open to that with everybody? We're not making any commitment.
It really depends on how the truth and reconciliation, because I would really like to see our focus be on that and
Yeah.
really be moving that forward.
I think in this catalog, this vicious pink, there is a philosophy of Biennale on the second page. I just can't remember exactly.
It's,
what the-
I usually have it stuffed under my desk here. Is it still there? No, it's on my desk, I think, in my office, but
So we might find
somebody
out.
might have
yes.
one lying around here. You're good. I don't know whose this is. They've got some stickies in there, but,
I have a pink,
this is the last one. This is the new one.
Oh, I
The pink
see.
one's from
the previous,
before.
right.
This is the one that has Squamish in it. I'll pass this around.
Pink is there.
There's they definitely still have pink. Sorry, interlude. Sorry, the theme of Open Borders Crossroads was the 2014, 2016. With commitment to transforming public spaces where people live, work, and play in transit, and to exhibiting great art as a catalyst for dialogue, learning, and social engagement. It goes on and on and on. Yeah. But really it is about generating conversation and discussion, being provocative and challenging and interesting and international. But so I think this is a good way to dialogue with them, to say, look, these are the themes that we're exploring this year. How do we, does yours fit in with ours? Yeah.
Just from a question from the budgetary standpoint, so if they're requesting $20,000 this year, I presume, are we taking that out of our public art committee budget, or is that
Separate.
is it separate? Where does the money come
Is
from?
it separate?
Well, that's what the question is.
This is the first time we've worked with the Biennale, because we didn't exist the last time.
Yeah.
Right.
I think if I'm to read council, I think they want the public art committee to drive the public art stuff and advise, but if we sort of think that this is outside of our core, we can say back to council, we really support this, we think this is kind of cool, but we need money from council. Budget's almost at the end, so it might be out of luck, and then it might just be simply up to us to decide if we want to fund it with this budget or not. I think it really almost really depends on exactly if the Biennale comes back with something that we really see as synergistic with what we're trying to do,
That might have a
potentially.
problem.
I'm just looking back at the minutes because I wasn't here at the last meeting, but is big ideas the theme? Was
Or is it?
to the minutes?
Reconciliation's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
maybe.
I'm just asking the question, it says big ideas
No,
in,
you're saying check the notes, that's what you're saying.
yeah, well, I'm just trying to get up to
I think
speed on it.
that was relevant to what, how she explained what the Biennale
Oh,
does. So
yes.
they talked about their education program,
Yeah.
interdisciplinary K-12,
Yeah.
that complements the curriculum. And I think that's what
I see,
the education program is, the big idea.
I see.
It's
I can't remember if
cross-disciplinary.
they presented a theme for this round. Can someone pass me a?
They may not
Does
have
anyone
one yet.
remember?
Swayze doesn't.
Yeah. My brain is
I,
filtery fuzziness.
my apologies, I should have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there is a big idea in
Education.
after.
But I can certainly do a little digging to find out if they have a theme or not, but I think either way, we correspond back saying, this is our big idea,
Yeah.
this is our theme. How do you fit in if you do?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Catherine can write it, because we must have
Because,
it.
because, yeah.
So we also don't want to spread ourselves too thin if we really want to have a focus that has impact.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Well,
also,
I have a meeting with Quest next week too, so I'd like to explore with them a little bit, their views on Biennale and how they're looking to integrate it too, so.
Yeah, I remember them saying that they're providing the facility, like home.
Artists,
For the facility.
apartments, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think they really, I think they found some challenges just working with the program, but I think they really benefited dramatically from the program in terms of the art that was up there and the interaction with the students and the artists.
So they're really committed to art and serious art.
Mhm.
Yeah, working, yeah, it's really impressive.
Okay. Are we getting anywhere? My poor dog's in my office, so. Poor little button. So back to major projects. I'd like us to come out today with a bit of a genesis of what this is going to look like. And I think maybe Sydney and I and a few others will see if we can figure out how to make more money. Make money from trees.
Well, so the idea is to do, sort of have a thought of two projects, right? And so if we're gonna do that, then really with the Squamish First Nation, my understanding is that we probably just have to go and tender a thing. We wouldn't put a request out for proposals because it's just, there's not gonna be enough.
So Isaiah, do you think it would be better to commission things? Or like how would the artist community in the nation feel if it was more of a proposal call from Artist Nation artists, Squamish Nation artists? Or we go to John, Bill, and whomever and say, we would like to commission a piece of work. And they would show us a proposal or something like that. How, what do you think would be more respectful?
Right.
Just let,
I think the commission, you know, we have like a list of artists
Okay.
that we think that would be, qualified or, a good person to be part of that.
Mhm. And I think it was Fran that talked about those woven patterns, and like it doesn't necessarily have to be, or it could be both, a totem structure, a wood structure versus something that maybe could be displayed in a at Brennan Park on a wall or something, a tapestry or something. So I don't want to limit the nation's artists in terms of what we may.
Not necessarily carvers, it could be a variety of techniques or specialties.
Could be any of that.
It's a dream of mine personally to work with Squamish Nation or other First Nations people in Mosaic, right? Because the style of West Coast, Coast Salish art, it just lends itself so well visually to that. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many.
So we don't want to limit it. So that's interesting. So you have a list of artists that sort of are your top artists that.
Probably good.
What are people's thoughts about that? I had May.
I just wanted to ask a question. Is Susan Point, is she?
Musqueam.
She's Musqueam, but that's not, that's separate from Squamish?
No,
Oh,
Coast
Salish
Salish
family.
family.
She's a different
nation.
So you wouldn't suggest go outside of Squamish Nation? for
I
this
would suggest if
proposal?
we're putting something on Squamish Nation territory, it should be Squamish
Yeah,
Nation.
okay.
From.
Yeah.
It's a protocol.
Protocol.
I just on that particular point, I know the Nature Conservancy of Canada, when they were actually commissioning the print that they did, got somebody from Seashell to do that. Well, it just causes all kinds of grief. There was a lot of very angry people saying, what are you getting somebody from up the coast, not very far up the coast, to actually do something for a project that's specifically in Squamish. So things may have changed, but I do think we need to be sensitive to that.
And
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, it's addressing the issue, it's addressing our understanding of reconciliation on the national perspective, but starting with our own community.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
And so what you're proposing, of having these two, streams or projects that are going together, I think resolves that in an important way,
Getting
And-
involved based on budget too, right? So
Yeah.
we work really hard on finding money quick.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we can somehow get up to 120 to 150 and have 60 to 75,000 for each stream of the projects, that's significant, I would say.
Just speaking to the stream of the project with Squamish Nation artists, I feel like the Arts Council could provide, if the project, and it's not a huge contribution, but the project involved youth as a component in terms of mentorship to Squamish Nation youth, then I could probably write and provide, Arts Council could provide $2,500 to that, but essentially I would need to know that now, because the grant's due on Monday, so.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm looking to, so we say, but I'd say, yeah, go for it.
Okay. Would there be, I imagine that would only apply to, let's say we did that stream and it funds hypothetically 3 projects with 3 different nation artists. That $2,500, I imagine just from doing the youth programs would only be enough funds to cover one of those projects. So would there be a particular artist that we'd have in mind at this point in time? Is that too early?
I think that's a little early.
Okay.
And it could be 2 or 3, and it could be one big one, and maybe, you know, one at 40,000, at 2 at 10,000, you know, the scope. And obviously we want to work with the artist to figure out the scope and the value and where it's going to go. And
In other words,
how
just a
to
Squamish
involve-
Nation artist,
Sorry?
just a Squamish Nation artist.
Yeah.
That's all you need to put on it. No
Yeah,
name.
yeah, yeah, I need to
Yeah.
put, like a name, similar to what we did with the Clan and Conquer account, I just need to write the name and a biography down. as
Oh,
part of
you do
the-
need to have the artist.
I do, yeah, as part of the application.
Put Swayze on.
Just a quick question. So when Jim Hart carved the reconciliation pole at UBC, was there, because he's high deck, was there fallout from that? I mean, is traditional territory of Squamish Nation there? I mean, it is in Kitsilano.
It's Musqueam.
Musqueam.
And it's under debate.
Don't go there.
It's a hotly debated issue.
But the thing about UBC too is it's got the I don't know what the longhouse is there, so it's really a provincial, and if not even larger, you know, with the poles
I'm
and
just
that
talking
kind of
about the
stuff too.
land, right? I mean, I love his work anyway, but I just wondered if there was fallout in the nations, whether that was a discussion.
Yeah.
Probably just depends who you talk to.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you look at.
Bill Reed's in YVR, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
fair enough.
It's-
But I think what we're trying to do
But I think
is
Squamish
honor
is a little bit different, so.
People
Oh, yeah,
that have
no, I
been-
was just curious
Yeah.
if there was a story there that we should know
So
about.
you need an artist's name. When do you need it by?
The grant is due on Monday at the end of the day.
And we can use it as one of the smaller projects or the bigger projects.
I don't think it matters either
So
way.
if you do the smaller projects, you can use my name.
Right.
And because I'm a weaver,
Mhm.
right? So.
Yeah.
Just go on my website. You've got my website.
I think every bio also is.
We could go in camera if you wanted to talk about some names. You want to do that?
Like right now.
Yeah. We can do that. I just wouldn't want to have that conversation in the public if we're throwing names about.
Yeah.
I mean, for the purposes of this grant,
Yeah.
if the artist changes down the road, is that a big deal?
No, it's not a huge deal. I think what the funding body of this particular grant wants to see is that youth were engaged with the professional artists in the context in which you're proposing. So
Let's use Halachton's name.
yeah, exactly. So for example, if it was a carving program
no.
in which youth would participate in the creation of a public piece of artwork, then they just need to know the concept, the outcomes, a rough budget, and who the artist is, so that they know that it's a professional artist that is engaging with the youth, because that's part of the intent of the grant.
As probably everyone knows, Halachton, very well-known artist, is Soyce's brother. So she can do a little arm twisting and just say, hey, Brad, you're lending your name to this. Scratch that from the record. But maybe that's just the way we go, right? And he's a pretty well-known name and has done this before with many young artists, so. See if we can do that? No one saw any of what just was discussed, it's all wiped from the record.
Smoke and mirrors, turn that down.
Yeah, but it's just for the grant.
Yeah, exactly. And so what I would write for, because the grant has a cap to raise.
We have a very high amount of people who watch this online, so.
And she never tells a lie. My mother.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's a great start. So, yes, you just had a curious look in your face, so I'm assuming you're
Well,
cultivating
no,
it.
I'm just, the wheels are turning here. I think, so we know that we have $87,000 now with the potential of adding another, let's say 50 with grants. So that would bring us up to roughly 137,000 with a very successful. Do we want to consider maybe looking at a percentage split of that budget that we would allocate towards the Squamish Nation commissions, and then how much would be left for the large scale project?
I don't know.
That's a way to start. I'm wondering if the first conversation is with the nation and some of the artists and get an idea of what, for example, this type of thing, this reconciliation pole, what that type of thing costs, or what type of wall weaving costs. And then if we can come up, oh, that's $60,000 together, or 70 or whatever, and then we see what's left over. That's one way to go.
I'm on, sorry, I'm off, kind of off the topic what they're talking about right now, but I'm looking at First Peoples Cultural Council. That's funding, and also Canada Council.
Yeah.
Yeah, can I count there, for sure.
Yeah.
And who's yours? Which?
There's also the BC Arts Council, is the one that's
Oh,
talking about with the youth grant, but the First Peoples Cultural Council definitely is a resource, and Canada Council.
And Heritage Canada.
Heritage Canada. In terms of turnaround,
Yeah.
with Canada Council, you're looking at 3 months. Canada Heritage is about 6 months. Provincial authorities are usually about 2 to 3 months.
And we can also use the elders if we do it, because we have our own grant application within our own nation.
Oh, neat.
So if we do like what Mom talks about, the feast,
Mhm.
so we get money from the trust and saying that, you know, this is going to go towards the feast for the big celebration of whatever we're unveiling or raising or whatever we're doing, the
Excellent.
project.
Awesome. For the
That's a
ceremony.
huge contribution.
Yeah, that's for the ceremonial part of it.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Is everybody feeling comfortable generally with sort of how it's wiggling around right now?
I am feeling a little confused in
Yeah.
terms of 2 streams and how do we prioritize and what's going on, but hopefully that will come out somehow. If we're doing both, if we're doing one, if we just don't.
I'm
know.
hearing, and I really don't want to feel like everyone's just agreeing with me, so please let me know if you don't. That, and I'm trying to base it off what we heard today with the elders, is they really want to see an opportunity to showcase their traditions, their art, their culture, and to be able to provide a place for their people to get recognition. I mean, there's the whole selling of the art and having artists become, have viable incomes to live on and that type of thing. I think that's sort of in that realm. And then there's this whole idea of truth and reconciliation, and what does that mean? And that could be a poll, but it could be, I think we're opening up that box quite a bit to interpretation and collaboration, and do that more of a competition type route, where we're really opening up, saying, hey, bring us your really interesting ideas, your provocative ideas, your collaborative initiatives. We want to explore this with our community, with the nation, with the people in the district of Squamish, and do that more as a competition route. And the other stream would be going out to 1, 2, or 3 artists, and actually commissioning a weaver, for example, a totem carver or a wood carver, for example. We could commission a canoe if that's something, you know, a beautifully carved and painted canoe, that could be it. But I think we want to leave it up to artists to sort of say, hey, this is what, but, so that would be more directly working with one artist, commission a piece, and this would be more of a competition.
If we had some really good applications kind of thing for the Squamish Nation individual artists, and we could use the whole budget to support that, is that a first stage in the reconciliation thing? So then we don't do the reconciliation stream until we, I'm just trying to understand what might come out of this, so that we're not disappointing people or doing a little bit here and a little bit here and nothing feels like it's really coming together.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that
Yeah.
I'm wondering.
I'm trying to really not predetermine the outcome too, and let it be a little organic. That's just,
You say that, but then you say, but I'd like to have some definite stages here, right, to go. So we have some definite ideas. But
I
that's-
want a coalesced concept of where we move forward. If it's broad and organic, that's fine. If it's specific and we're hiring this guy to do this, that's fine too. I just wanted us to come out of this with a bit of a strategy.
Well, I'm sort of used to the idea that first we review the proposals. So, for example, for the after the shooting in Montreal Polytechnique, there are those tables around sort of main and terminals, which in every December there is some kind of a memorial there, and it became a sort of meeting place for people who wants to remember those women murdered. And so when we have a proposal and it makes sense, then we can start thinking about money, about, the proposal is I think the sort of core of it.
So do you think we're ready for, you're going away, aren't you? You're traveling. When do you leave?
I leave on January.
She's going to the Olympics in Korea.
Oh, wow.
Well, sorry, I shouldn't have told the world that, because the world is watching. Oh, the Olympics,
The
not
Olympics,
here.
Yeah, exactly, it's different broadcast. I leave January 23rd,
Okay,
so we get a half.
yeah. So you're away for the February Public Art Committee?
I'm away for February, Matt Gunn will be stepping
Okay.
in.
But if we could have at the next one, a bit of a framework for how we might put a proposal out for a Truth and Reconciliation project.
Yeah.
Matt's done them before, so, and then once we have something sort of in front of us that we can nitpick
Some kind
and
of criteria.
something more concrete, right?
Yeah.
And in the meantime, Sydney will do her application and we'll at least get the students sort of funding lined up for whatever artist make Halakton, at least for the application. And then we'll work with Suecia and whatever body or whatever group or whomever at the nation to look at their artists and see where we can come back with maybe some proposals for the committee to consider. Does that work for everybody?
Yes.
My thoughts are with the Squamish Nation is that I don't like the idea of commissioning a piece. I would rather see a proposal go out and see what comes back
Yeah,
from
several.
artists, yeah.
Because we're choosing work, not
Mhm.
a person.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah.
How do you, I just want to make sure, how do
Rather
you,
than designate a commission, you know,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
yeah, no, how do you think, would either process be respectful of,
I like her idea.
okay, perfect, excellent.
I think it just makes it more fair
Yeah.
and,
Yeah, no,
but at the same time, we're designating that it must be a First Nation artist
Yeah.
or a
Well,
Squamish
swap,
Nation
yeah.
And
artist,
That's
also
right?
it becomes much more fair, because
Yes,
if we're
yeah.
choosing between 6 different artists, the one who is chosen makes 5 very unhappy
But
artists.
they weren't given a chance.
So it creates
Yeah, no, I,
creates the
Yeah, also they may, depending on the caliber and their careers, they may have already be too busy, some of them.
yeah.
So,
Absolutely, so going out and basically putting a proposal out to Squamish Nation artists, and we can get that out. And do we want to, I guess we'll look for Matt to bring back some parameters about that in terms of, do we want to say there's 2 $10,000 and one $40,000, or we want to say one $50,000, I don't know, like, and we don't have to determine that today, but maybe Matt brings that back in
Sure.
terms of how the proposal might go out. Anne?
I was going to ask, you know, the beautiful piece that's in the main entrance of the O'Dane. Well, Lupton did that, did he? It's
Yeah.
metal.
Mhm.
Do you
Yeah,
have
on
any
the
idea
porch.
what that cost, what the price for that was?
Yeah. There's a lot of
I might be able to make some inquiries.
Yeah, just out of curiosity.
Yeah. Well, I think Halakton's the type of artist that if a Michael O'Dane commissions a piece of work, it's a certain price, and if Checkamiss Center commissions a certain price,
Oh, I
maybe
see.
a different
Real
price.
flexible.
Yeah. Anne?
Just to give you a sense, just juggling some numbers around here, if we went with a 40-60 split of 137,000, the 40% that we could do 3 projects at $18,000.
Mhm.
That would be a starting point. I mean, you could, play around, so there's,
And one could be 25 and one could be
Yeah,
10 and one,
yeah.
that's what, yeah, I think,
yeah.
but that's sort of, yeah, okay, so we'll work on bringing back a proposal on how both competitions might look like, and then the committee will have something structured to debate and discuss at the next meeting.
Quick question too, moving back to the youth grant application, I just need to know like estimated time frame when this would theoretically happen. In terms of what.
I think
project.
we always sort of discussed that we'd love this to be ongoing in the summer, like this to be an activity, this to be, I think we'd like to aim for the summer, late summer. It all depends on the artist and when they can get it done, but it'd be good to have some activity for summer. It's not a hard timeline, but.
But definitely before January 2019.
Yeah, it'd be great to have it done in this calendar year.
There's a certain urgency towards it too.
I think so,
This
yeah.
is-
Anybody else? I want to move on to roundtable quickly because we're already at our 2-hour.
No, just look at the contacts on the grant application.
Perfect. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. That was good. There are no status of recommendations or referrals from council. Roundtable. I know Catherine had a roundtable. Do you want to talk about your party tomorrow night?
Oh, okay, sure. I launched my company Arts Adventures in now, and our first event is tomorrow evening, and most of my events will probably be sort of private things, but this one's very much public with the great artist over there called Toby Jackson, painting the chief with the Northern Lights over it, and it's going to be Norman Rudy's at the Executive Suites. It's $40 tickets in advance. It's very possible we may sell out the first events, but it's the first of a monthly thing. So
And it's wine and, what do you call it?
glass of wine. It's what is it?
Pinot and paint.
Pinot and paint, that's right.
Anyway,
I like the Merlot.
Is Merlot.
Look out for us on Facebook, either at on the Norman Rudy's page. I used to think it was Norm and Rudy, but anyway, Norman Rudy page or Arts Adventures
I
page.
thought it was 2, it's not?
Yeah, it's
Norman.
Norman,
Oh.
it's the name of the dog that passed away.
Oh, is that
and
what it
then
is?
the current dog that they'd given zone or
Okay,
whatever.
now I have
Okay.
total respect for it.
Yes.
Okay, so it's yes, very worthy cause. So anyway, people are welcome to ask about it. It's going to be ongoing, so I'm just making a terribly personal pitch.
It sounds
Oh,
great.
it's at 6:30
That's
tomorrow evening. It's 2.5 hours. $40 tickets in advance, 45 at the door. And I think we've been pretty overwhelmed by the interest so far, which has been great. And I think it has a lot to do with Toby and the piece she's designed for it. But,
It's competing with the OCP Q&A tomorrow night.
well, I know where I'm going to be. At the OCP.
Are you gonna have wine?
Oh,
And
yeah.
the sorbet.
Afterwards.
And the-
Afterwards.
Are you kidding? It
Yeah.
might be in a coffee mug, but I'll be drinking wine at the OCP Q&A. Anybody
thank
else?
you.
Thank you, that's awesome. I think these types of initiatives are so valuable to our community, they're fantastic.
Thank you.
At the Foyer Gallery for the 4th year in a row, we're having the International Women's Day Art Show, which is the month of March. And Pat Robinson, who's initiated and the organizer for it, she doesn't have a co-organizer, right? So I'm helping to promote it, and so it's open to women only. Sorry, guys. But the entry forms are due the end of January, and the $25 fee per entry goes towards this year. The theme is Nourish, and it's going towards Helping Hands, one of their programs. So it's a worthy cause. Usually the show raises a couple grand or whatever to give to the cause. And yeah, if anybody wants a
What's that date again?
the show is on from March 6th till April 2nd, but the deadline for any women that would like to be part of the show is January 28th. And
And I wanted to drop some off, I forgot to drop some off at Totem Hall, so if I could give you a few hits, 5 or something. I know you have lots of artists that Eileen and Roseanne and Rosie and all those artists, yes.
Thanks,
And
Billy.
anybody need one?
Yeah.
Any artists need one? Thanks. Grant?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Go around the table, anybody else have any round table? How's the reno, are you done? Are you open?
We're open in the first space, second space is under renovation now. So
I
ice
got
cream
it,
shop will
someone
be
went
open
and
in
got
March.
me a sandwich from there, but I haven't been there since it.
Yeah, ice cream shop will be open in hopefully mid-March.
Good for you,
So
good job.
then we got the other business. I'll take one.
Sydney,
Great.
oh, by the way, do you want to talk about council actually funded the partnership thing?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, so I guess this week the Squamish Arts Council made a proposal for community partnership with the District of Squamish, and there's currently a motion from council approved unanimously, I believe, to accept the partnership. So, yeah.
What does that mean?
What does the partnership look like?
We have no idea.
This is a bit exploratory moving forward, but the concept has been approved, and so I think it's going to be up to Arts Council and staff to sort of make the particulars of it from here out. But
I think, if I may, the intent is, we as a district, we provide millions of dollars worth of programming for soccer and mountain biking and hockey and all this stuff, and we put this much into arts programming. So this is a very small first step in leveraging a partnership with the Arts Council to actually start to create a more robust arts programming within the whole community leisure programming world, but really leveraging the Arts Council as the body that can help deliver that for us, and also to help build the capacity within the Arts Council to just keep building and growing, so that someday when we get an arts center, we have the capacity in the community to sort of really make it work when down the road. So this is just a very first step. It's not a huge amount of money, but it's enough to stimulate that added value programming in the community, mostly for our youth, but really for everybody.
yeah, and with that being said, Arts Council is an arts and cultural organization, has access to now utilize that money and leverage it further
Exactly.
to increase that funding. So
Exactly.
it gives us the flexibility to bring more money into our community to spend on arts and stuff, which is good.
Yeah.
And thank you so much, Sydney, for spearheading
Oh, she's been
all
amazing.
of the programming and all of the grant writing and all of the work that you've done over the last couple of years, because it's been such a big
And
yes.
speaking on council's behalf, I think it's because Sydney has been so persuasive and committed and proven that it was a pretty easy decision for us to go, yeah. So you can't move anywhere. You're not You're not allowed to leave the community. I'm going to stick something in your tires. You're never leaving.
Yeah, and then, the Arts Council's community grant is going to be open at the end of January, so just keep an eye out for that. The opening process will be pretty much all of February, closing.
And we did augment that by $5,000 this year, did we, or is it the same as last year?
It's the same.
I thought we added. Oh,
Yeah.
last year we added a bit more.
Yeah, so it's the same, but what did happen is a commitment for 3 years, so this grant will
that's right.
exist for at least 3 years, and then the Arts Council will renew, so there's what
More
was
sustainable.
more sustainable, but what was also a problem, not a problem, but a challenge, was that there was some uncertainty, so artists had to respond as Arts Council responding to council's budget process, but now that we have confirmation, artists can think ahead of time and plan.
And you
it's
know
great.
money's coming in and.
Yeah.
Awesome, thanks.
I really appreciated when you emailed around to us the hospital photograph kind of thing. And I wondered if it would be appropriate if we had a closed Facebook group, that if there's odd little things like that, we could post them. And so that instead of trying to keep track of a list of different emails kind of thing with ideas, there was just one place that we could put them and then we could see them. I don't know if people would be interested in that. I know there's a
If
number of
there's
people.
a
who are
Facebooky
on-
people that likes to do that, go ahead, I'm not one of them.
So-
Or,
I
yeah,
was thinking something.
Sorry?
There's a new web platform called Slack.
No,
Yeah.
I'm on Slack for a job I'm doing right now. It's handy.
Yeah.
For sure.
Also just do like Google Docs and have a
Yep.
file and just upload PDFs to that, you know.
yeah.
So there may be other kind of
Mhm.
mechanisms to do that kind of thing.
Those free?
And they're almost all free, I think. Yeah, but that's a good idea, it'd be good. You can't get your email in there?
I would have to log out and log back in and then,
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Um,
So disappointing.
Can I just
Yep.
mention something else right now?
I'm
Um,
not, yeah.
For the third, it's not a third consecutive year, but for the third time, the Whistler Arts Council has invited visuals to have a show in Whistler at their art center. And it's being installed tomorrow, and there's an opening reception on Tuesday the 16th. Is that correct, next Tuesday? And so it's, I think, from 6 till 8. And so if you happen to be in Whistler or want to go up for it or whatever, the theme of the show is for the love of art, and there's a lot of kind of sweet art, lots of pinks and Valentine-ish kind of things, and not, I mean, it wasn't specifically intended to be a Valentine's show, but I think it's mostly women that are participating in it. So anyway, so keep your eyes open for that. It'll if you're up in Whistler over the next, it's on for a month and a half. So if you're up in Whistler, yeah.
Magic, anything to add to Roundtable, or you're
No,
good?
no, I'm exhausted.
Heidi wants to go walk.
Teresa?
Other than this weekend, I'm going to be here at the public library, talking about weaving. And then on Sunday with the Eagle Watch, or not Eagle Watch, the Eagle Count.
Yeah, cool,
Yeah.
the Eagle Festival.
The Eagle
Yeah,
Festival
yeah,
on
Eagle
Sunday.
Awesome.
And then just a quick update, we had another successful Christmas dinner for the homeless and the single parents, and it was awesome. We had a lot of, I think we had about 10 or 12 boxes of brand new stuff from NEC. They donated.
Wow.
So
I had the world's worst cold that night. It's not, sorry, that was just had a memory.
Yeah.
You're done, cool.
I'm done, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. A motion to terminate the meeting, moved by Magic, seconded by Catherine. All those in favor, opposed, motion carries.